You got dressed this morning, probably without thinking about it. You reached into a drawer, pulled out something soft that a machine stitched together on the other side of the planet. Put it on your body. The whole operation took about 40 seconds. Those 40 seconds are the tail end of one of the oldest technologies our species has ever invented. Not one of the oldest fashion trends. One of the oldest technologies. Older than the wheel. Older than farming. Older than writing. Older than any city that has ever existed. Clothing is so old that it comes before our arrival on most of the continents we currently live on. And that's not a coincidence, because in a very real way, clothing is the reason we got to them. But we weren't born with it. For most of our time on Earth, humans wore absolutely nothing. So the question is, when did that change? And how would you even find out? When everything involved rots. Let's go back to the beginning. And the beginning is a little strange, because it starts with us taking our fur off. Somewhere between 1 and 2 million years ago, our ancestors stopped being furry. The leading explanation is sweat. Out on open African grassland, in midday heat, a bare body covered in sweat glands is an incredible cooling system. It let early humans jog after prey that would drop a lion. And in 2004, geneticist Alan Rogers found that human ancestors already had dark sun-protected skin by about 1.2 million years ago. You only need sunproof skin if the sun can reach you. So there it is. Naked ape. For over 1 million years. Which was completely fine, right up until we walked somewhere cold. Here's the problem. Archaeologists ran into hide rots, plant fiber rots. There is no 100,000-year-old shirt in a museum waiting to be labeled. One of the biggest turning points in human history left almost no direct evidence. So researchers went looking for a witness that doesn't rot. And they found one. It's a parasite. 2 kinds of lice specialize in humans. Head lice live in your hair, exactly where you'd expect a primate parasite to live. Body lice are different. Body lice don't live on your body. They live in your clothing, lay their eggs in seams and folds of fabric, and only crawl onto skin to feed. Think about that for a second. There is an insect that evolved to live in a habitat humans manufactured. That louse cannot exist in a world without clothes. Which means if you can date the louse, you can date the invention. In 2003, a team led by Ralph Kittler and Mark Stoneking at the Max Planck Institute did exactly that. They compared head louse and body louse DNA, used the mutation rate as a molecular clock, and worked out when the two split. Their answer around 107,000 years ago. Later work by Melissa Toups at the University of Florida pushed it back further. At least 83,000 years, and possibly as far as 170,000. The oldest evidence we have for clothing is a bug's family tree. Decades of digging, and the case gets cracked by head lice getting a promotion. Now here's where it gets more interesting. Because we weren't the only species getting dressed. At 2 rock shelters in southwestern France, Abri Peyrony and Pech-de-l'Azé, archaeologist Marie Soressi's team reported something in 2013 that stopped people cold. Deer rib bones, ground down and polished at one tip, worn in a very specific pattern, and they're called lissoirs. You drag them across hide to press the fibers flat and make leather softer and more water-resistant. High-end leatherworkers still use tools shaped almost identically. These tools are around 50,000 years old, and no modern humans were in that part of Europe yet. Neanderthals made them. But there's a catch, and it matters. Neanderthals left hide-softening tools and even twisted cord, a 3-ply fiber fragment from Abri du Maras, published by Bruce Hardy's team in 2020. What they barely left are tools for punching precise holes and stitching. So the best guess is that Neanderthal clothing was draped. Wraps, cloaks, hides tied on, warm, functional, and open at every edge. That gap is about to become the whole story. Deep in Denisova Cave in Siberia, researchers pulled out a slender piece of bird bone about 7 centimeters long. It's polished, it's pointed, and at the blunt end, somebody drilled a hole. It's a needle with an eye, and it's roughly 50,000 years old. Here's what makes this so important. A needle isn't a clothing upgrade. A needle is a completely different category of object. Draped hide keeps some heat in. Sewn, fitted clothing seals at your wrists, your ankles, your neck, and traps a thin layer of warm air against your skin that your own body heats for free. That's not an outfit. That's a portable climate. Once you can carry your own climate, the map stops mattering. Humans with needles walked into Siberian winters at 40 below. They crossed the land bridge into a continent nobody had ever set foot on. Every person alive in the Americas today descends from people who could only make that trip because someone put a hole in a bone. We credit fire and language for spreading our species across the planet. Clothing belongs on that list. And then, almost immediately, humans did the most human thing imaginable with it. They made it about status. About 34,000 years ago, at a site called Sungir in Russia, several people were buried with extraordinary care. 2 children laid head to head, an adult man nearby. Covering them, thousands of beads carved from mammoth ivory, roughly 3,000 on the man alone, around 10,000 across the burials. The beads weren't scattered. They lay in tight rows tracing what these people wore. A fitted cap, a tunic, trousers, footwear, all beaded and sewn. Archaeologists have tried carving those beads by hand. Estimates run around 45 minutes each. That's thousands of hours of work, sewn onto clothing, and then buried in the ground on purpose. Nobody does that for warmth. By 34,000 years ago, clothing had already become a language. It said who you were, what you were worth, and who your people were. Before you opened your mouth, it still does. Warmth was solved. Now we were showing off. Around the same time, in Dzudzuana Cave in the country of Georgia, a team led by Kvavadze found something even more surprising in the sediment. Microscopic fibers of wild flax, 34,000 years old. Some were twisted, meaning they'd been spun into thread, and some had been dyed, traces of black, gray, turquoise, and pink. Ice Age humans had a color palette, and that flax runs straight into farming. Archaeologist Gilligan argues our need for cloth wasn't just a side effect of agriculture. It may have helped drive it. Flax is a fiber crop before it's a food crop. Once people started planting it, clothing stopped being something you hunted and became something you grew. Which brings us to a man frozen in a glacier in the Alps, about 5,300 years ago. Ötzi the Iceman died in his full wardrobe, and it's spectacular. Goat hide leggings, a coat of sheep and goat skin, stitched in alternating light and dark panels, a bearskin hat with a chin strap, a woven grass cloak, deerskin shoes packed with grass insulation, at least 5 animal species, each picked for what it does best. And the coat had been repaired more than once. Some neat sinew stitching, some patched in a hurry, with grass thread out in the field. He had a jacket with a pattern, and he mended it. So here's the full picture. We lost our fur over 1 million years ago and spent most of our existence bare. Somewhere around 170,000 years ago, a louse moved into our clothes, which means the clothes existed. By 50,000 years ago, Neanderthals were softening hides in France, and someone in Siberia was drilling an eye into a needle. That needle unlocked the cold, and the cold unlocked the planet. By 34,000 years ago, we were spinning dyed flax and sewing 10,000 ivory beads onto a burial outfit. By 5,300 years ago, a man in the Alps was walking around in a 5-species coordinated outfit that he patched himself. And this morning, you opened a drawer and pulled something over your head in 40 seconds without a single thought. That's the strangest part of being human. We invent something so completely that it disappears. The needle, the thread, the fitted seam. That was survival technology at the absolute edge of what people could do. And now it's just Tuesday. If you're not wearing clothes, you're wearing 170,000 years of solved problems. If you liked this one, there's more where it came from. Stick around.